Good morning from my garden. It's Monday morning. It's Memoir Monday if you're doing memoir writing with me. It's October 28th. The month of October is almost over. It's about 9:45 in the morning and it's only 70 degrees, which is such a glorious temperature in Mississippi. One of the most wonderful parts of October is that finally the heat begins to subside a little bit. Today I'm celebrating the fact that my morning glories are beginning to bloom. I've been talking about these morning glories for at least a month. And longer than that, I've been looking out here at these vines that encircle my garden. This is a little secret nook, a little secret niche where I have allowed the vines to cover a big arbor. The purpose, there's no purpose, really. Well, there is a purpose. I'm going to talk about that purpose. The purpose is that this year I planted them very, very thick because I wanted to block out the view of my neighbor's house. When I look out my screen porch, until I did this, all I could see was my neighbor's house, and that's very disenfranchising for me because I don't want to see anybody's house. It's not that particular neighbor. It's the fact that I don't want to see a house. I want to see nature when I look out from my yard. And so I planted these seeds extremely thick this year to create a privacy screen, and they have done that job all summer. In fact, I had begun to think it was like this all around my yard all summer. Those plants are we're gonna bloom too. But it's a morning glory. A morning glory bloom only lasts one morning. In fact, by midday they begin to close because it's too hot. They last one morning and then they're gone. But because there are so very, 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 very many buds on a morning glory vine, the blooming season stretches out. It's a rippling effect. Yesterday I took a picture of this area. It seems like it's almost the same view, but it's not. It's a different group of morning glories reaching up over this arbor. Well, this goes all around my garden, and I've created what I call my secret garden. I do it every year. And what I want to talk about is, in addition to the fact that what a glorious way this is to start my day today, and how important these morning glories are to me, I want to talk about the fact that every year I do this, and this year they were so late to bloom that again I asked myself, are these going to bloom this year? Are these going to bloom this year? How easily we give up on life. We give up on our faith. I grew up going to a Baptist church, so when I start writing, it's very easy for me to wax into scripture. And there is a scripture, in fact, I quoted a couple of scriptures today about the morning, about lack of faith. In Lamentations, the writer talks about how God has let him down so many times he's failed him. But then finally, he realizes in the morning that God was there all along. And that's sort of what I want to talk about. Right now, our nation is just ravaged by nasty politics. And I'm going to be very honest. I've just about given up on the whole bunch. Because not be so much, it's the nastiness that I can't stand. And so I get discouraged and I think, what's the use? But there is a use. There is a reason to hang on. Because I have to believe that if there is a God, that He's going to see us through this mess one way or another. It may not be the way I want it to go, but God is able to prevail. He either is or there is no God. So I want to talk about that today, about the eternal glory and the way that the way that God is able. There's a song that we sing in church, "Great is thy faithfulness." And I have to believe that God will see us through. And that's one thing I want to talk about today, but because it's Memoir Monday, I want to tell you about morning glories and my childhood. I plant morning glories because of my grandmother. When I was a little child, my house was behind my grandmother's across an alley and a little gravel road. And even when I was a very little child, I would go off to Grandma's house, kind of like Little Red Riding Hood. I'd go to Grandma's house, and at the back, my grandmother was an avid cottage gardener. She had a huge stand of hollyhocks in the very back of her property that bordered the alley. So I'd first stand underneath those hollyhocks, and I'd feel protected. I'd crawl into that little tent of flowers and feel protected. Well, then I would pass on a little bit farther, and I'd come to an arch that was covered with morning glories. And again, I would crawl into that arch and feel protected. I'd meander through the strawberries and the irises and the poppies and the bachelor buttons and the snapdragons until I finally got to my grandmother's door. And when I got to my grandmother's door, I felt sheltered. I've written about that many times. But when I plant these morning glories, you sow this morning glory seed, and these are heavenly blue morning glories. I only use burpee morning glory seed because other heavenly blue morning glories aren't the same. But I sow these seeds every spring and every fall, regardless of how I give up on them, they bloom again. And I do that because of my grandmother. Because when I see this blue blanket of flowers, every time I'm back into the sheltering arms of my grandmother's garden, the safety I felt with my grandmother, I'm back in a memory that carries me back home. So that's the reason. That's my challenge for Memoir Monday. I actually know that there are people who are. I have very many friends who are not Christian. They're Muslim or Buddhist, and Christianity is not the only faith. It's not the only religion. It's the one that I'm familiar with. It's the one that I return to again and again, but it's not the only one. And today I want everybody to think about what they count on to pull them out of disparaging thoughts I think most writers deal with depression. Anybody who thinks or is in their head as much as writers are going to be prone to depression, because the only solution is to get out of your head a little bit. And my garden is the way that I get out of my head. I come outside and I look at the beautiful things. I look at the fact that, again, the sun has risen, the flowers are blooming, and nature has not failed us. Nature keeps blooming, keeps moving along. And that fact, the fact that things manage to keep moving along, is what saves me from myself, from my own internalizing, from my turning beautiful days into dark thoughts. So today's exercise is for you to write about ways that you survive yourself.